Good morning and namaste, everyone. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is live again at our 85th episode. And welcome to everyone. Hindu Lounge, for those who are joining us for the first time, is brought to you by Hindu Pact, which is the policy research and advocacy collective and an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. I am Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA, and with me, as always, is Utsada. Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti, and he is the executive director of Hindu Pact. Utsada, welcome to Hindu Lounge, and we have and as you know, every week we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues, and this week, Utsada, we have a really interesting issue because we are talking about an issue as contemporary as something that ended last night. We are going to talk about the hostage crisis that occurred in Houston, Texas, and the hostage taker actually took the worshippers and a synagogue hostage to free up an Al Qaeda convicted Al Qaeda terrorist, Aafia Siddiqui, and we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the national security policy of Pakistan, and we will talk about the Kashmir Exodus Day, which is coming up this week. So with that, I will give you an opportunity to welcome all our guests. And Utsada, thank you as always for making time and joining. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Ajay. And making time. It's our show. We have been doing it for the last 85 episodes. So yeah, and it's not about making time. It's about being part of the show. We are in this together. So it's a wonderful opportunity to share a community, the events that our community does, and the thoughts and the ideas that our community has, especially what we are doing on a weekly.
For some reason, Utsada, I lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So overall, what I was saying is that this is the reason why we do this show, so that we can engage with our community, share our thoughts, and share what's happening within our organizations, within the Hindu community, and how the Hindu community looks at events around them, because we are all in this together, and as Americans, we all have a shared destiny. So this is very interesting that what happened over the last 2 days, last day especially, is connected to all of us in so many ways, more than just what happened yesterday. And what happened with Aafia Siddiqui related hostage taking in the Texas synagogue at Collisville is connected to the Hindu community, especially for over 20 years. And today we will discuss how that is connected in terms of how Hindu community has also been at the receiving end of the same people who took the hostages yesterday. We will also discuss Aafia Siddiqui herself in detail, and we will discuss about some of the events that are unfolding now and can possibly unfold in the future, as well as events that are connected to it. So thank you for having us, Ajay.
And Utsada, with that, let's dive right in. And we are going to talk about Aafia Siddiqui. So, Utsada, let me share the screen a little bit. That is the unique thing about our show. We actually have a lot of research that we share with our our viewers, and our listeners. So, Utsada, I want to remind everyone that our show comes live on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. And on all the three platforms, you can either watch live, or you can, if you're watching a football game, which is actually at 1 o'clock, but if you're watching some pre-game shows and all that, you can always watch it as recordings that are available on all three platforms. With that, Utsada, tell us who is Aafia Siddiqui?
So Ajay, before we go into who is Aafia Siddiqui, I think it is
let's talk about a little
important
bit about the hostage taking itself. Huh? That's
Yes,
the
yes.
news item
Yeah,
that I have.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
slide you added yesterday night after we
that's
spoke,
right.
it is the perfect introduction to understand, because everybody who is anybody has been following the news yesterday, and they read or heard about the Texas synagogue hostage situation, where about 4 people were taken hostage during a bar mitzvah ceremony in a small town in Texas called Collisville, very small town, and it's the synagogue, it's a Jewish place of worship, was called Congregation Beth Israel. Those four hostages were eventually released after almost an entire day in captivity. One hostage was released previously, and the person, who is a British national of Pakistani origin, and that's all the information that has been released or that we are aware of, uh, is was claiming in this situation that they wanted the release of Aafia Siddiqui, again a Pakistani American Pakistani woman actually, who is a neuroscientist, was a neuroscientist, and who went to MIT, who went to Brandeis University, very well known university, so known for a little bit of Hindu phobia. Um, she went there, she got her education there as a neuroscientist, and has been serving an 86-year prison term for being part of Al Qaeda. In fact, her nickname, during this during her trial, as well as during her presentation to the media when she was caught and all the activities she was doing, was eventually highlighted. The name she was given was Lady Al Qaeda. So Pakistani American woman, highly educated, extremely radicalized in Islamism, uh, nicknamed Lady Al Qaeda, very well connected to Al Qaeda, uh, has been a vocal speaker on issues like Chechnya, Bosnia, anywhere wherever there is Islamic issues. That has been the story of the world in the last 25 years, including Jammu and Kashmir. She has been very involved emotionally with those, and she's serving an 86-year prison term. And this hostage taker wanted to free her. Now, that's the
Yeah.
background of the
So a
event.
couple of things to point out, right? A couple of so Tharaji, thank you for kind comments. But a couple of things to point out. So that one is that this woman was not only she was brought up in the U.S. and went to high school here, went to college here, and all of that. But when she was caught, actually, one of the charges against her was firing against uh, U.S. Military personnel. And when she was caught, she was actually she was as this particular slide shows, she was actually trying to export from the US or purchase from the US and send it to Taliban. $10,000 worth of night vision glasses. Now, for people who don't know much about night vision goggles and body armors, these are the things that you would wear so that you can enhance your night vision, and you can you would it would be very useful in the combat. And her goal, of course, was to procure this equipment, send it to Afghanistan, give it to Al Qaeda, and use it against the against the U.S. troops. So her stated the charges against her, which were actually proven in the court of law, was that she was procuring equipment to kill American soldiers. Okay, that everyone has to keep in mind, that here is a person who is in jail for 86 years on not some trivial charges, but on charges continuously supporting Al Qaeda, being active member of Al Qaeda, procuring military equipment and sending it to Afghanistan to kill Americans. Okay,
That's correct. And Ajay bhai, one more interesting
and she
thing.
was the top seven. I think she was number seven on top 10 wanted Al Qaeda fugitives.
Correct. Not just that, she divorced her husband, with whom she had three kids. And after 6 months of the divorce, she married the person who was involved in funding Amar al-Baluchi, the person who was involved in funding some of the hijackers of the 9/11, so that she could get that person into the United States again. So she was trying to get her, marry somebody. She divorced her own husband, and tried to get Amar al-Baluchi, who's also the cousin or nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the number two actually
Number
in US list of people who were involved in the 9/11. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is actually in prison in Guantanamo Bay, and he's also one of the key people who led to information that eventually was used to to kill Osama bin Laden.
right,
And it is said that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed also gave up information on this
right.
lady, Afia, because of which she was arrested. and
Yeah.
that was used as evidence for her 86 years sentence. Not just that, when Afia was in a prison, in a transitory prison in Afghanistan, she actually tried to steal the gun, a M4 rifle from a US sentry guard, a prison guard, and tried to shoot him, and I think even shot him in the leg. So that's something she tried to do in an effort to try to escape. So the list of things that were used as evidence to give her the 86-year sentence was long. She clearly was associated with Al Qaeda. She clearly is a radical Islamist. And that is one of the reasons why even successive Democratic Party governments, also who have been otherwise very, very sympathetic to people who were at Guantanamo Bay. In fact, under President Obama, a lot of the prisoners who were at Guantanamo Bay were released. They went
Yeah,
on to
because it was
join
the
jihad.
stated goal that they wanted to shut down the Guantanamo Bay
Exactly. In
prisoners.
fact, they
So
went on to join jihad and went on to join killing American soldiers in Afghanistan. In fact, some of the top Taliban leaders today in government in Afghanistan were prisoners at Guantanamo Bay and
Guantanamo
were
Bay,
released
yeah,
during President Obama's time.
that's right.
So there is a whole range of events that unfolded and that were done to make the prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, give them freedom. And successive governments, especially Democratic Party governments, had made that an election issue to, and they did release many of them. Still, they were not able to release Afia because of the level and the nature of the charges that were against her. But this is the interesting part, Ajay bhai, and we can go to the next slide if you want. Uh,
Yeah,
what is interesting is that she still manages to continue to get some of the most active support of Muslim activists around the entire world.
yeah, but Utsada, but the more interesting, even before that, right? I want
Mm.
to say that there are multiple reasons why she is getting the kind of support she is getting, but even more than that, she has this streak of anti-Semitism in her that was evident even when she was a college student. Now, in college student, she was very active with the Muslim Student Association. She was trying to convert people, and she was very well known. It's not like this is an unknown, studious student who is engaged in studies and not aware of outside world or any of that. She was very active in Muslim Student Association, very active in the conversion activities, even though she was studying at a university like Brandeis, which is a Jewish university. So she was a student at MIT. She was doing that. She was doing it at Brandeis, and she was actively, even at that time, were proponent of anti-Semitism as view. So it is not surprising, and I'll let you, continue where your thread. But it is not surprising that someone like her inspires followers to take hostages at a synagogue, because this is her history for last 20 years, right?
Well, yes, and that's why I was said in the beginning that if there was any issue that was real or perceived involving Muslims and Islam, she
Yeah,
was involved, and she was involved at a very aggressive level. In fact, after she was married the first time, with her first husband, she actually wanted to move to Bosnia. If you remember, last week we had discussed about how Turkey and Pakistan were hosting events in Bosnia and in Sarajevo to target Kashmiris, Hindus in Kashmir.
yeah,
So there are a lot of connection you will find as we go through this program about how this not only impacts Americans but also impacts us as Hindu Americans. So her she was clearly anti-Semitic. She was anti-Semitic to the point where when the Pakistani embassy appointed a 3-member defense team of lawyers, along with the public defenders that the US government provides to help her fight her case, she actually refused, and she said that she wanted to make sure that prosecutors and jurors be DNA tested to make sure that they are not Jews. That's how much hatred she
yeah.
has for Jews.
Well,
And
and she wrote to President Obama saying that study the history of Jews. They have always backstabbed everyone who has taken pity on them and made the fatal error of giving them shelter and it is this cruel, ungrateful backstabbing of the Jews that has caused them to be mercilessly expelled from wherever they gain strength. And so, and then she goes on and talks about the Holocaust, and she says this is why Holocaust keep happening to them. So she is blaming the victims. This is victim blaming. So she is blaming Jews for the killing of 6 million Jews in Holocaust, right?
No, correct. And we will come to the people later on in this show who support her today, and who are the people who actually believe that, subscribe to her opinion and have empathy for her. So we'll come to that. But keep this in mind. She justifies Holocaust. She hates Jews to the point where she's unwilling to even have them on her defense team to protect her in from such cases where she's accused of being actually a terrorist and being some of the top Al Qaeda leaders. This is a person who has hate against non-Muslims in her at every level, especially against Jews, and later on we'll see against who else. So just amazing. This type of person is still getting empathy.
And people want her out of the jail, right? There's a free Aafia Siddiqui movement that is going on, and there are a whole bunch of organizations, the governments, right, including the government of Pakistan, who's actively campaigning for her to be released. What's the deal with that? Why would they want now? We should note that it was actually she was arrested with the help of Pakistani government at one time, right?
Well, that
After
was during the time when President Bush
That's right.
President Bush had told President Musharraf
Yeah,
in Pakistan that if you do not give us what we want, we
right.
will send Pakistan back to the Stone Age. That was
You're with
literally
us, or you're either with us or against us.
no. That was different. That was on the Iraq issue that he said. But with
Yeah.
Pakistan,
No, a continuation of that. I mean,
correct. Specifically with Pakistan, President
yeah,
Bush had said
yeah,
that if you do not give us the people we want, we will bomb Pakistan and send it back to the Stone Age. And I think, Ajay bhai, if you go back to the flyer that we were looking at, I think the screen went away. I wanted
yeah.
to go through some of these are flyers that are on social media, on public space. And last week, these were actually very popular flyers because I just want to go through the list of the organization who were involved in demanding just last week to release Aafia Siddiqui, knowing fully well what her background is. So here is the list of people here. You have Council for American Islamic Relationship, Texas chapter. You have ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America. You have Muslim Students Associations. You have Empower Change. Now remember, some of the people who attack Hindu organizations are also part of Empower.
Yeah.
Some of the people who attack Hindu organizations, especially World Hindu Council of America, VHP America, our own organizations, Hindu Pact, they are part of CARE. So keep that in mind and see these people who organize this event and who are the promoters of this. So just keep this in perspective. So who are the people who are on the side of Aafia here? It's the American Islamists who for a long period of time has been targeting us as Hindu Pact or as VHPA or other Hindu organizations like HAF. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. Next,
So,
next.
so that so UAE, United Arab Emirates, issued a
Yeah.
statement yesterday, right? What did they say?
So UAE said that, see, this is the reason why we banned CARE. And Hassan Sejwani, who is a senior member of the UAE coalition, because UAE, as you know, is Dubai, Sharjah, and Abu Dhabi. There are multiple princely states, so
About seven of
all of
them.
them join hands, and it becomes the Emirates. So he's a very influential leader in the UAE, and he said. You see why we in the UAE designated CARE, Council for American Islamic Relations, as a terrorist organization. And again, connecting back to some of the things we face from many of these organizations like CARE and Muslim Student Association and ICNA, they were also the ones who were campaigning for the Islamophobia bill. They were the ones who worked with Ilhan Omar and got the bill through the House. They are the ones who got Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders to bring it into the Senate. And if you remember, and I would request everybody, Ajay, if you could put the link out there,
Yep.
we have a campaign to the senators where if you sign it and put your zip code, it will go to your senators, requesting them not to accept the Islamophobia bill in this form. Because let me tell you, tomorrow, or people who held hostages and people who are like us, who are criticizing people like Aafia, could be accused outside the US of Islamophobia and persecuted. So this is the reason why it is important not to let bills like the Islamophobia bill pass through. So carry on, Ajay.
Utsada, it is interesting that this is before the hostage taking crisis. That just the fact that some of these organizations like Muslim Student Association or CARE, or AMP, and MAS, and Empower, these some of these organizations, when they did the event just in support of Aafia Siddiqui, the UAE, representative said that this just the fact that they are doing an event in support of a convicted Al Qaeda operative is the reason why they had designated CARE as a terrorist organization. Now again, we don't know what the internal politics between CARE is and what the UAE is. What we are presenting here is what we have seen in the social media, and it's clearly a, a, a an Arabic Muslim country is calling out CARE on this. Now, I do
Sunni
want to
Arabic.
make
So Ajay bhai, it's not just Arabic Muslim country. It's a Sunni majority Arabic Muslim country who, in the past, was some of the biggest donors to organizations like CARE in the beginning. So the reason I'll tell you why UAE, in my opinion, has gone against CARE, and not just UAE. You will even see Saudi Arabia eventually cut the cords completely. They are already going against CARE significantly. The reason is that because at this point of time, and this is a conversation for another show maybe, and we are going to comment on it because it's important to comment on it. And if American policymakers, American lawmakers are listening to us in any form, they need to understand that the voices of Muslim communities around the world, especially in Western countries, especially in America, are now in the hands of radicalized Sunnis who are just 1 degree of separation away from groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS and Taliban. I'll tell you this because all these organizations who were wanting to release Aafia Siddiqui and were doing rallies to release Aafia Siddiqui, they are fully aware that the three major jihadist organizations in the world, pan-Islamic jihadist organizations, ISIS, Al Qaeda, and the Taliban, all three held American hostages, and all three wanted to release Aafia Siddiqui in return for the hostages they were holding. So the Taliban wanted to trade Bo Baghdal, who was a US soldier who willingly walked into their camp, so that he could become their hostage, and then they could release him in return for some of their own assets. So Taliban wanted to trade Bo Baghdal for Aafia Siddiqui. The ISIS wanted to trade Foley. She was this young aid activist who had gone to Syria, was very empathetic towards Muslim actually, but the ISIS took her as kidnapped her and then eventually killed her. So the ISIS wanted to swap Foley for Aafia Siddiqui, and then so did the Al Qaeda in Syria, which was the in Syria is known as Al Nusra Front, and today now it's known as Hayat Tahrir al Sham. So they keep changing their names because every name they take eventually gets added to the list of banned global organizations working with Al Qaeda. So they just change their name to a new Arabic name. But the point being made here is that if you are aware that Aafia Siddiqui is a known Al Qaeda operative, top 10 Al Qaeda operative, was used as an exchange point for three world known terrorist organizations, was so anti Semite that she refused Jewish lawyers who were trying to help her, and still you go out and bring out rallies in support of her, wanting to get her released. Where do you stand in terms of your own hatred for non-Muslims? That is the point that Americans need to understand, and most of the society around us needs to understand.
So, So that I do want to make one point, and that is that, like, I mean, when this hostage crisis occurred, CARE did issue a statement saying that they don't have anything to do with the hostage crisis, and so did the Free Afia Siddiqui group, because at one time, the hostage taker said that he is the brother of Afia Siddiqui, and the Afia Siddiqui family has said that. He was not, a blood relative or a brother. I think the term brother was used somewhat more loosely in this particular case. So I just want to, bring up that, before we hear from the CARE lawyers, we want to say that, yeah, we did read CARE statement. uh, we don't know which one is true or not. We are just presenting what we have seen. So, with that, so that we can go to the we can go to the next slide that you have here. And this is another, this is a I believe this is your some of the clippings that you got from the social media, correct?
Correct. So the things I was trying to portray here is that you know there are groups like Free Afia Siddiqui and ICNA, which are very active in targeting us as American Hindus and targeting India on Kashmir. So I just wanted to show the intersection of people who were involved with the Afia Siddiqui release movement, and with people who are targeting American Hindus, and with people who are targeting India on the issue of anything concerning Muslims. And they regularly call us fascist, Hindu extremist, Hindutva, fascism, Nazism. They throw the word around, but it is important to look at their own connections, if I can put it that way, to really, really shady, well-known terrorist groups, and their empathies for them. So ICNA, I just wanted to show that ICNA, which is an organization that regularly targets us, they target Hindu candidates who fight for elections for both parties, both for Democrats as well as for Republicans. In Texas, Sri Preston Kulkarni was attacked by them. So something that all Americans, Hindu Americans, should note, whether they are you know anti-Republican, pro-Republican, they consider themselves woke or whatever, you still are going to be targeted by these people. And if our people do not understand that, they are learning it the hard way, as they can see in current administration's posture towards many Hindu Americans also, in the appointments, in the positions of appointments in the White House, and so on and so forth. So can you
Yeah,
go
I
to the
mean, I
next?
think most people who even who even claim that they are Hindus, if they just claim that they are Hindus, they have been shut down. So the only people, there are quite a few people of Indian origin in the current administration, but none of them have explicitly uh, expressed any sort of close ties with any Hindu organization, or expressed a close affiliation in the practice of their close affiliation or practice with Hindu faith.
Yeah,
They
if you
just
are a
sell
vocal
themselves
Hindu,
as
if you are a
they sell
vocal
themselves
Hindu.
as Indians, right?
Yeah,
Whereas all the Muslims who have been appointed by this administration explicitly express pride in their Islamic heritage, but none of the Hindus.
exactly, exactly.
So tell us about this one. What is this? What are you trying to say with this particular clip
Well,
or graphic?
yes. So again, I just wanted to show some social media posts that have been arriving over the last year, if I can put it that way, because the Afia movement has been going on for a while, but it has really caught a lot of momentum over the last year, coinciding with the new Biden administration that has come to power, and the way in which the muscular Muslim lobby has come out after the new administration came to power. So this movement also picked up. The Free Afia movement picked up. It also coincides with some of the activity that is going on with regards to Kashmir issue. So you will see that a very well-known Kashmiri terrorist, Burhan Wani, was killed, who was killed by the Indian army, and which triggered a huge backlash in the Kashmir Valley from the radical Islamists. So you will start seeing posts throughout the last year intersecting the Kashmiri jihadist aspirations with the Free Afia movement. I just thought I'll take two of those images and two of those social media postings. On the one on the left side, you will see that there is a Kashmiri flag. The flag with the orange, one third orange with the moon and the star. That's the Kashmiri separatist flag. It's the flag of the Muslim League. And you see here that Aafia, they're say Aafia say Kashmir tak. So their goal is release Aafia and then free Kashmir. So
So, just people who don't understand Hindi or Urdu, Afia se Kashmir tak means from Afia to Kashmir. So they're drawing an ideological and a movement and a radicalism link between Afia Siddiqui and Kashmir.
that's
They,
absolutely
they're
correct.
drawing a straight line between the two.
And both need freedom. So Afia se Kashmir tak, both need to be freed, or both need freedom. So that's how they're connecting it. So this is, they are connected not just at the hip, but they are connected at the head.
Right.
The movements, people who use the phrase they are connected at the hip, but it's important for American lawmakers, American law enforcers, American strategic analysts to understand that the movement that connects them all, whether it is Kashmir Jihad movement, Kashmir quote unquote freedom movement, to Al Qaeda, to Taliban, uh, and all these things are all connected at the hip, and they are literally, they are connected at the head, and they are literally all part of the same radical Islamist initiative to quote unquote dominate and conquer the world. And that they have not made any secret of it. They continue to do it for the last many decades. It's important for us to understand, it's important for us to recognize it, and work through our law enforcement agencies, through our legal means, to enforce our ideas and our response to them.
Right. So that let and we're talking about Kashmir today because this week is the Kashmir Exodus Day, right? And this is the day, I believe it is on 19th of January, is the day 30 years ago, or a little over 30 years ago, when all the Kashmiri Pandits were driven out of Kashmir. And there's a very bloody history to that. A lot of Kashmiri Pandits were killed brutally by sometimes by their own neighbors. They were given their own neighbors gave up the Kashmiri Pandits to the terrorists, and a lot of the women were raped, men were killed. There are the very very sad and moving, touching stories of how the terrorists sponsored by Pakistan um, and armed by Pakistan came to Kashmir and brutalized the Kashmiri Pandit, and that led to the exodus of 350,000 Kashmiri Hindus. And when they left Kashmir, and they still to this day, a lot of them are languishing in the refugee camps. We know a lot of people, so that through our, through our organization and through other Hindu organizations' efforts, who and connections, where their own families had to leave Kashmir after they were brutalized. And uh, every year uh, on January 19th, we talk about that, we remember that, and we reinforce our belief that one day Kashmir will be safe for the Hindus, and the Hindus will be able to return to the land of Kashyap Muni, the land that is really sacred to all Hindus, and we will not cow down to terrorism. And so, your thoughts, Sudha, on that?
So yeah, it is important, Ajay bhai, to also commemorate this week the Kashmir Exodus Day, or the day 32 years ago, when people of the Hindu faith from the Kashmir Valley, mostly Hindus, were forced to leave the valley, leave their entire heritage of thousands and thousands of years, going back 5,000 years actually, uh, leave everything behind, sell their property or just abandon it, and live in the safety of other parts of India. And still today, they have not been able to go back to their homes because of the same ideology, the same violence that we saw and discussed right now on the Aafia Siddiqui case, which is radical jihadists who came and took everything from them, including many of their lives. So, so we just wanted to recognize it. This is an ongoing tragedy that the Hindus from the Kashmir Valley face. I just in the flyers, in the images you see in our screen, we have put together the Urdu and translations and the English translations of some of the slogans that were raised along with the killings in those fateful days of 1989. And you can see how they were hounded out. The Kashmiri Hindus were hounded out from
So,
their
can you
home.
read some of those? Because for people who are just listening and not watching this slideshow or cannot read because of the font or any of that, it might be helpful if you can just read them out and tell us what they say.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just start with some of the more there are quite a few of those. इस्लाम हमारा मकसद है, कुरान हमारा दस्तूर है, जिहाद हमारा रास्ता है, which means, this is a Urdu phrase which says Islam is our destination, Quran is our constitution, and jihad is the path through which we achieve it. So it cannot get any clearer. And these are slogans that were actually raised in 1989. So if somebody who is not happy with what we are saying and thinks we are Islamophobes, please, you can accuse the people raising these slogans of whatever you want to accuse them. But please, we are just reading what they were saying, so don't call us Islamophobes. The second slogan I wanted to share is "Zalimo or kafiro, Kashmir hamara chhod do." So it translates to, "You cruel kafirs or infidels, vacate our Kashmir." Now again, kafir is a word that is used very specifically in Islamic literature and jurisprudence, Islamic theology and jurisprudence, specifically meant for people who are at the lowest form of human existence, because they are idol worshippers, and they are not people who are people of the book, or people of Allah, who follow Allah. So they are the lowest form of humans, as described in Islamic jurisprudence and theology. Another is कश्मीर में रहना है अल्लाह अकबर कहना हो कश्मीर में रहना है तो अल्लाह अकबर कहना होगा. So which basically means, if you want to live in Kashmir, you have to be a Muslim and pray to Allah. Uh, then there is a Kashmiri slogan, actually, and the other ones you were hearing were all Urdu ones, but there is another one called Asigachi Pakistan Bata Rosta Batana Ifsan, which means we want Pakistan with the Kashmiri Hindu women but without their men. So essentially, if you are aware of, again, the history of Islamic conquests throughout the world, especially in the Middle East and parts of Indian subcontinent, especially even Pakistan and Afghanistan, the conquerors always wanted to convert the Hindu women to Islam and have children with them, so that they are all Muslims, and kill the Hindu men, and so that it's a society that is completely subjugated and enslaved. The Mughals used to do the same thing. Before the Mughals, the Turkic uh, Sultanate, Delhi Sultanate, and their predecessors, who were the Mahmud Ghaznavis and the Ghoris, did the exact same thing. Uh, you know, the Delhi Sultanate, people like Amir Khusro were all Muslim, converted Muslim men of Turkic origin, forcibly marrying Hindu women, most of them Rajputs, because the Rajputs were at that time the ruling dynasties in many parts of northern India, and they were the children of those converts. So that's ongoing, and you can see it from this Kashmiri slogan as well.
So there are a few more, and but they're along the same lines, so we don't need to go over all of them. But I think this kind of gives you a flavor of what the Kashmiri uh, terrorism is all about. Kashmiri terrorism is all about subjugating Hindus, terrorizing Hindus, driving Hindus out of their home, and in really a revenge um, for what happened to Bangladesh. And if you go back a few years, it's basically, from Pakistan's perspective, unfinished agenda of partition. Because
Yes,
Pakistan, if there any part of India that any part of India that had some substantial number of Muslims, whether majority or not, Pakistan wanted it to be included in Pakistan. And it just so happened that in 1947, and we don't want to go over the entire history because we have another topic today, but in 1947, the people of Kashmir, were terrorized by the irregulars of the Pakistani army, and that led for people in Kashmir, uh, by a vast majority, to opt for India. And the Maharaja, that time, the king who was ruling Kashmir, did sign the instrument of accession to India, but there was a lot of push from the Muslim majority, and that was proven at a later date in a constituent assembly, in Kashmir, to really validate this accession. So there was a vote, and the vote and majority of the Kashmiri people said they wanted to be with India because of this terrorism unleashed by Pakistan, right? So this is from Pakistan perspective. They have never really, Pakistanis have never really reconciled with the fact that a majority Muslim, area in India actually opted for India, and
Well,
that is the cause for this terrorism.
correct. And so yeah, I just wanted to correct you a little that Pakistan's movement in Kashmir is not connected to 1971. In fact, it is believed that Pakistan's effort to promote Khalistan movement was a response to 1971, strategically from their side. Pakistan was always and will always be invested in Kashmir, and that you will see in the next part of our show when we discuss Pakistan's national security policy that they actually framed for the first time and came up with a paper on it. So for Pakistan, Kashmir is Pakistan. Literally, that is how their mind works. They cannot live without talking about Kashmir. In fact, many in Pakistan believe and honestly admit privately that if they stop talking about Kashmir, Pakistan as a country itself will fall apart. That is what literally keeps the country together. And you can, there are surveys in the Pakistani population that actually points to that across Pakistan, irrespective of whether they like their ruling party, they like their government, they like their army, they like their state governments, like each other, whatever may their differences, they all come together on the issue of Kashmir. So if literally Pakistan realizes that it will never have Kashmir, which is the truth, and that is going to remain the truth, Pakistan as a country might actually fall apart, and that is also something that we have to think about.
Right, because I think the eventual goal, and you'll see this in the when we talk about the next topic, which is the national security policy of Pakistan. You will see, um, you know, why where they're coming from, and it's very interesting with Soda. So we pivot now to the Pakistani national security policy, and as I bring up that the national security policy, we actually, as you know, Soda, we are a research based show, so we actually go, unlike a lot of other people who look at the news item, we actually go to the the original document, and we talk about the original document, and we show the relevant portions in this particular show. Now, I found it very interesting with Soda that when this policy was released, the Pakistani spokesperson said that we want 100 years of peace with India. And so that I started thinking that why does he want 100-year peace? Because most of the people who seek peace in perpetuity. Like, so that if I were to say that I want to have peace with Pakistan, or I want to have peace with Afghanistan, or I want to have peace with Nepal or any other country, or if I'm a US citizen, and I would say that I want peace with Canada, or I want peace with Mexico. I'm going to say I want to live in peace with these countries forever, right? In perpetuity. Why do you think this spokesperson calls for 100-year peace, right? So I started thinking so that, and I have a theory. And before we go to the actual national security policy, my theory is that Pakistan is basically trying to buy time. Okay, the if you look at the demographic projections, and we should do a show on this. There was an article that recently came out in Wall Street Journal, which says that the Hindu population in India is is imploding, is going down in a and going down drastically. Okay, And you know that Pakistan is one of the highest growth rates in the world, and the Muslim population in India is growing at a high pace. So I think that the calculations that the Pakistani government and the security agencies who put out this particular document is that at some point the demography will work in Pakistan's favor, and then there's no need for asking for peace. Okay. Um, Otherwise, who calls for 100-year peace? Everyone wants to live in peace forever. Right?
Well, so Ajay bhai, the thing is, there are two. It's not just the demography angle. I agree with you. There is a serious wisdom within Pakistan, and they don't hide this. In fact, their president Ziaul Haq, as early as the 1980s, had this notion, and it is part of their psyche. It's how they think. So they cannot even hide this fact. President Ziaul Haq, or General Ziaul Haq, actually, at that time had said in the 1980s, when he met uh, at that time Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi. See the mindset here. He said, look, Pakistan is an Islamic country. There are 50 other Islamic countries in the world. You nuke Pakistan, there will be 49 other Muslim countries where Muslims will live peacefully. You We nuke India, there is going to be no other Hindu country left in the world, Hindu majority country left in the world other than Nepal. So look at the mindset. I'm talking about 40 years ago, a military ruler of Pakistan talking to a prime minister of India at a time when, Hindutva was non-existent, Al Qaeda was not in existence.
Well,
It was
Hindutva
a
as a phrase was non-existent.
as a
Hindutva
phrase
always
was not
existed.
always existed. Yes, that's true. Hindutva as an identity marker in the politics of the world was non-existence. So you go back all these decades, 40 years back, and you see the mindset of the Pakistani leadership in a world that was full of, in the Cold War world, where religious jihadism was also not mainstream except for in Afghanistan. So you can understand that mindset existed in Pakistan for forever. In fact, Jinnah himself was very much aware of it. Maududi, Abu Ala Maududi, the leader of Jamaat Islami, the precursor of many of these Muslim organizations that currently target us. Maududi himself was fully aware of that. He had actually opposed partition because he felt that if Muslims of the entire Indian subcontinent remain together, they will be able to capture the entire Indian subcontinent rather than just Pakistan and what is Bangladesh today. So Maududi felt that in 1947,
Yeah.
that Muslims staying together are a much more stronger force to defeat and enslave Hindus rather than Muslims dividing themselves into three different countries. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Two different countries at the time, and then
At that
three.
time, yeah, now becoming three different. So that notion has always been present, and it is, to some extent, when you come down to the brass tacks and give up thinking along politically correct lines, which our Hindus love to do all the time, you will come to this notion and you will come to this realization, and then you have to deal with the realities of the world around you, which eventually Hindus have to deal with too, both in the Indian subcontinent and in America.
Yeah. So now let's take a look at the national security policy of Pakistan. For those who are interested, you can always do a Google search, and you will find this document. It's available. This is the portion that they have released. Actually, this is about 60-70 page document, but and this is a small portion that has been made public. There is a much obviously the entire national security policy, the framework that they have is much is a much larger document, and most of that is classified. So this is the portion that is actually released, and I am going to so that walk you through the portions that are relevant to us in terms of Hindus or Hindu issues, right? So we're not going to obviously cover everything in the national security policy. They talk about a lot of different things, including what their policy with respect to China is, and United Nations is, and gender equality is, and all the other things. They're not interested in that. That's their internal matter they can talk about. But how does it impact Hindus? Is what we are global Hindus is what we are going to talk about today. So that with that, let me go and point out some of the relevant portions which I have highlighted here. So the first portion that I've highlighted is, you know, is the policy, is the preserving our identity. Now, remember, Pakistan beats up India in every international forum for not being secular enough. Now, I don't know a country that is more secular and more diverse than India. I think US is trying very hard to be diverse and inclusive, but US does not have the kind of diversity in religion, kind of diversity in ethnicities, in terms of languages spoken, in terms of the local cultures and customs, all of that. That level of diversity doesn't exist
No, no,
anywhere in
that
the world.
also the longevity of that diversity. See,
And longevity,
yeah,
right?
that's
It's
the
like
critical part. I mean,
10,000 years of
being
diversity.
diverse for two generation doesn't cut it, because the real conflicts arise over a period of
Or
7,
period
8,
of
10
thousands of
generations.
years. And
Yeah.
we have and India has been around for 10,000 years, and India has had the diversity. Even if you read Ramayana, you see Bhagwan Ram going from Ayodhya to Sri Lanka, and you see all the different people that he meets and interacts with, and you see the diversity. You see people who are living in a forest. You see people who are he goes to a place like Sri Lanka, which is rich and opulent, and a city made of gold. And he's from a place like Ayodhya, and he has married someone who is from present day Nepal. So this is the diversity of all the cultures, customs, local cultures and customs, of course, overriding Hindu dharma as underlying philosophy that enables all that. And so Pakistan beats India up, Pakistan beats Hindus up. Pakistan always calls out Hindutva, the essential character that enables this diversity, and says that, oh, this is Hindutva, oh, this is Hindu is not, oh, you guys are not secular. But look at Pakistan. The first line in the policy in preserving our identity is preservation of the Islamic character as enshrined in the constitution and our diverse cultural heritage. India does not say that. And yet, Pakistan stands on the rooftop calling India non secular. Whereas have they ever held a mirror to their face, Utsoda? Have they ever looked at the mirror to see what they're and why is it that the rest of the world laps this up when it is right here in their national security policy that they will always be Islamic, but they want the rest of the world. They want France, they want America, they want India, they want UK, they want Nepal, they want Sri Lanka, all of them to be secular. What gives?
This is a old this is again a very old trope that they apply all the time, and especially Pakistan is especially good at it. I think no other Islamic country has been as good at it as Pakistan. And it's basically the rules. We don't follow the rules we want you to follow because we are special. And that is because if you look at the name Pakistan, it means the land of the pure. So they do consider themselves as special because they are Muslims. And the rules that they want others to apply to their lives don't apply to them because they are special as Muslims. So that it goes down to the very fundamental of what Pakistan is, the ideology behind that country. They are just being honest about themselves. The problem is, Ajay bhai, I don't blame them for this, because at no point in since the last 100 years has Pakistan or people who support the idea of Pakistan around the world have ever not spoken this truth. They have always said this as it is. I blame people in our communities, democracies around the world, democracies like India, democracies like America, democracies like those in Western Europe, or in Japan, or anywhere around the world, liberal, pluralistic, open democracies. I blame them for not taking Pakistan and countries like Pakistan on their face value. You act Problem is that Indians or Hindus, many Hindus actually, if you go to India, you can go to Jawaharlal Nehru University and you will meet a dime a dozen of them. They actually don't want to believe the Pakistanis, that when they say that they are a monotheistic, absolutist, supremacist state, as as they keep describing themselves, and they're like, no, 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 you must be saying.
Look, I mean, and a lot of their not only they are this self-centered, uh, you know, uh, a country, they absolutely have hatred for Hindus. I mean, remember we are doing this Chingari project, and we are talking about three minority girls, Hindus, almost all of them Hindus, being abducted every single day and forcibly converted and married to men who are two or three times their age. And this is a country that is preaching secularism to the rest of the world. They cannot even pass a legislation banning child marriage for these little girls who are abducted. In fact, they're forcing the girls to go to the homes of their abductors to be traumatized even further. And
Correct.
so this is the country that is built on hatred. And people even in India don't understand. Look, Utsada, here is the second quote from the national security policy, and here they're talking about Afghanistan. Now India has gone out of its way uh, and helped Afghanistan in building dams and building their parliament buildings and provide building hospitals in Afghanistan and all that. And Pakistani policy explicitly says that, which is even more, given the held hostage, that Afghanistan policy is held hostage to India's regressive approach. India is not the country that armed uh, the Taliban and to fight against the American troops. And India is not the country that armed Taliban to bring down a democratically elected Afghan government. And here it is, uh, Pakistan blaming India for whatever is happening for regressive approach in Afghanistan. And the reason I bring this up is so that many people in America, and especially even Hindus in America, don't understand that there is a great deal of convergence when it comes to Afghanistan between the Hindu interest and the American interest.
That's
And
absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And you know American interest in Afghanistan not only revolves around ensuring that Afghanistan is not a satellite state of Pakistan, which Pakistan openly admits it wants it to be, basically a hidden backyard for that, where it can train terrorists and keep them in their miserable lives, as they have forced them into at this point. uh, American interest in Afghanistan involves having access to trade routes to Central Asia, having the ability to cut China off from trade routes to other parts of the world, having the ability to contain terrorism, and more importantly, having the ability to create a more pluralistic outlook in a part of the world where that is needed the most. And the only other country in the region which has a similar and congruent outlook as that of America's is India. America lost 20 years of opportunities since 2001 to fructify this in a real way. Uh, if even today America can provide and regain that opportunity, if it actually understands the need for building a land bridge through India into Afghanistan, because once the Pakistan, and it brings it back to the Kashmir issue, once the occupation of Kashmir by Pakistan and China is delegitimized, then not only does America have the ability to contain China's hegemonic tendencies in the region, but America also has the ability to regain its foothold into making Afghanistan a safer place for the Afghans as well as for the rest of the world. And that can happen only if America delegitimizes Pakistan occupied Kashmir and allows it in the public narrative, in the global narrative, to be reintegrated with India.
yeah. So that here is the securing our border section of the Pakistani policy. But the part that I've highlighted here is special attention is required to manage lingering border disputes which continue to pose security threats, particularly along the line of control and working boundary where ceasefire violations by India threaten civilian lives and properties while endangering regional stability. And so that this is again the example of instigating terrorism and then blaming the other countries for. In fairness, look, I mean, it's not like Pakistan has border issues with India. If you've been reading news in last 2 weeks, Pakistani border guards have been fighting with the new Talibani government in Afghanistan. Pakistan regularly has skirmishes on the Iranian side of the border, where a Revolutionary Guard and Pakistani army exchange fire on a regular basis. So this is a country that does not know how to live peacefully with its neighbors. Here is the strategic stability portion where they talk about the expansion of India's nuclear triad, open ended statement on nuclear policy, and investment in and introduction of destabilizing technologies disturb the strategic balance in the region. Pakistan's deterrence regime is vital for and aimed at regional peace. So, we're talking about Kashmir today.
Yeah, I mean,
Benazir Bhutto, who is a hero to all the liberals, whose grandparents or great grandparents were Hindus. What did she say? She said that I promise India 1,000-year war. What did her father say? That they will eat grass, but they will build a nuclear weapon. Now they are talking about a Hindu and predominantly Hindu country bringing about destabilization in technology. You want to add anything, Utsada, to that nice music?
I think your music made the point. Your music made the point. I mean, I would add is that if you remember the quote was discussing about prior to Benazir Bhutto is Ziaul Haq's quote about you know um, having India completely nuked and still having 49 other Muslim countries where Muslims could thrive and survive. Then you can go back to General Musharraf. Across political and ideological spectrum of Pakistan's leadership, you will see this recurring itself about being an aggressor on all fronts. Musharraf, when Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was taking the bus and discussing peace at Agra, uh, Musharraf was sending jihadis and Pakistani military across the line of control in Gilgit in Leh and across the border in Gilgit Baltistan into India during Kargil war. So time and again I have seen that it literally follows a cycle of about 6 to 7 years. Every 6 to 7 years, Pakistani leadership, doesn't matter who is in power, military, civilian, party, which party, that party, they all have to go through this cycle of strategic aggression against India, either through terrorism or through direct military intervention. Every 6 to 7 years, India responds back in an escalatory manner, and then limits it to a regional, small, local conflict under pressure from America or other bosses around the world, and it repeats itself in cycle. I think Pakistan achieves its goal of keeping India destabilized, and India has to deal with it because it's a country where people have people would give anything, pay anything to buy peace, and that has been the story of the region.
Yeah, and so moving on to the foreign policy in a changing world section, which is their section number 7, I believe. Here is a quote from the external context. Towards the immediate east, bilateral ties have been stymied as a consequence of the unresolved Kashmir dispute and India's hegemonic designs. Pakistan remains committed to normalization of relations with its neighbors, based on mutual respect, sovereignty, equality, and a collective effort to find pathway for conflict resolution, with the belief that shared economic opportunities are cornerstone for achieving prosperity in Pakistan and the region. Now, we've been talking about all the terrorism that they have been promoting, and so this, I don't think we need to comment further on this. And continuing on their Jammu and Kashmir again policy, they talk about India's illegal and unilateral actions in August 2019. I don't know what is unilateral action. It is India's territory. India decided that they want to further integrate by removing a temporary provision in India's own constitution. How does it affect Pakistan which illegally is occupying a portion of Jammu and Kashmir. And not only it occupies it, but it actually gifted a portion of that portion to China. So uh, I think and they keep talking about the United Nations Security Council resolutions, ad nauseum, but without so they think that people are ignorant or stupid, and they don't know the context of United Nations Security Council resolution. They don't know that India was the one which went to the United Nations Security Council and proposed these resolutions. And the reason and the precursor to implementing any sort of plebiscite was Pakistan first vacating all the territories, uh, Indian territories in Kashmir, which are part of Jammu and Kashmir, withdrawing all its troops, restoring the demographic balance before a plebiscite can take place. 75 years later, that's a moot point because the demography has been altered. Pakistan army has, uh, taken control over all of the territory, gifted the territory, as I said, part of it to Pakistan. So there's really no way you can now go back and do a plebiscite because Pakistan has already changed the ground rules, and they still keep harping on United Nations Security Council resolutions. Not going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to happen. I think eventually the world will see the legitimacy of Kashmir being fully united with India, including the parts of Gilgit Baltistan and Jammu that Pakistan controls and occupies. That will be it.
Yeah. And then it goes on, talks about India. A just and peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute remains at the core of bilateral relationship. Hindutva driven politics in India is deeply concerning and impacts Pakistan's immediate security. Come on. Again, they are talking about Hindutva, a country which constitutionally is not secular, a country that has virtually eliminated its minority population, a country that is so far radicalized, an exporter of terror, now is talking about the Hindutva, which is a essence of Hindu dharma, which is the basis of secularism, which is the basis of peace in the Indian subcontinent and far beyond. They're talking about Hindutva as being concerning. So the my take is that is concerning to them. Hindutva is concerning to them because the peace and equality that Hindutva brings is threatening to their ideology. I think that they are afraid that if the general population of Pakistan really learns about Hindutva and Hindu Dharma, they will actually gravitate towards them. And the basis of power that Pakistani religious leaders and the military and the politicians have over their own population will not be there. So they are actually afraid of Hindutva, not because of Hindutva being, uh, anything else, but Hindutva being this ideology, uh, which is all inclusive, which is peaceful, being attractive to their own population.
Well, the thing is that the truth is that most people in Pakistan, especially people in that who form the ruling party in Pakistan, the ruling structure in Pakistan, are fully aware that they were all Hindus. Uh, their own history is Hindu, very similar to Afghanistan. Uh, it's only in the last 600, 700 years that Pakistan has been really Islamized. And that is a very short period of time when you compare it to 4,000 years of recorded, 5,000 years of recorded Hindu history. So their Islamic identity is nearly only 10% of their ancestral identity. So That's the truth. That's the honest fact. Most educated people in Pakistan will know, they know that. They may not admit it. Only a small portion of the population is willing to admit it. So what happens is, okay, my daughter is here.
So let me continue. I get, while you attend to that, and it talks about India being consistently engaged in an effort to spread disinformation, and you've talked a lot about the disinfo lab and how the disinfo lab.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry. So
Oh, okay, okay,
yeah. So the only part of their history uh, that is Islamic is barely 10% of their history. So most Pakistanis know that. Most Pakistanis are aware of it. Some admit it. More and more of them are admitting it now, because as Hindutva becomes mainstream and Hindus embrace their Hinduness, it is natural that those who were Hindus for 80% of their 90% of their own history, but are today Muslims, will also embrace it in some degree. So that is the fear that Pakistan has. This fear is real. This fear is justified, because eventually there will be Pakistanis, whether they are from Sindh, whether they are from Balochistan, whether they are from Punjab or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, who will see that the Hindu history, the 90% of their history that was Hindu, was a far more civilizationally informed and far more civilizationally aware and far more prosperous and far more peaceful uh, than the history, the 10% of their history, where they have been subjugated to being water carriers and bow carriers and spear carriers of larger Islamic caliphates, whether they be Arabic ones, uh, Persian ones, or Turkic ones. So they were always the second level or the third level of Muslims who were subservient to a larger caliphate narrative. And they might like it for a short period of time. They think they like it now but as they say in a very famous saying, that the fanatic usually carries the most doubt. So the more Pakistan talks about Hindutva as being its antithesis and existential enemy, the more Pakistanis reveal that they are attracted towards it.
yeah.
So
And so that then they talk about disinformation and all that, but we have talked a lot about the disinfo lab and the false propaganda that Pakistan is globally engaged against Hindus. So we don't need to go over it today. I want to bring uh, so you can see their obsession in every section about on Kashmir, right? And today we are talking about Kashmir and Exodus Day, and so here is another portion where they talk about United Nations, and once again they talk about Kashmir and right of self determination and UNSC resolution, which are completely debunked, hypotheses and a false hope on their part that the world even buys into their false narrative. So that with that, I think that is the overall policy. I think that, as I said, they've released about 50 pages, and we went over all the 50 pages and highlighted all the portions that are relevant to Hindus. And for anyone who is more interested in in this particular document, it's just do a search. You can go to legalversity.com and you can download it. It's available everywhere. So please do look at it if you're interested in this. But otherwise, you don't need to, because Utsoda and I have done the research and we have presented the important sections to you, and we have saved you hours of work in doing this research. So you can count on us. Utsoda, I'm telling all the viewers that they can count on us to do the research and present important portions to them with a Hindu perspective. They don't need to go over the whole detail themselves, right? And with that, so that we come to an end of this particular part of Hindu Lounge, and we will now go on to our regularly scheduled three segments. This is a new
that's
music,
a new
so I
sound.
hope you like the new music.
I have at a loss for words, Ajay.
I know how much you love this kind of music and everything else. So I try my best to keep you amused. Hey, so that let me go on to the next segment, which is our regularly scheduled segment, and that is the Hindu Seva Charity or Charity Act of the Week.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयम्
So that once again, we want to, we are at the beginning of the year and we need funds to sustain our activities. And so we urge people to go to hindupact.org, click on the donate button and donate to Hindu Pact. Once again, our website is hindupact.org. Click on the donate button on the upper right hand side and make whatever contribution you can, or you can go to hindupact.org/donate and make a contribution to Hindu Pact. The next regularly scheduled segment for us is the Hindu good news of the week. Utsada, I was fortunate enough this week on Friday to attend an online, inauguration of Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce, and I want to call out Naresh Chawda ji and Ritesh Sahu ji and their team for for great effort in setting up the Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce. There were a couple of MPs, one of the ministers, uh, who were present during the inauguration. Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, also sent a message welcoming the setup of Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce. And so, my compliments to the Canadian Hindus who work with us in Hindu Pact and in VHPA. My compliments to Canadian Hindus for setting up and inaugurating the Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce. A very welcome move, and we hope that it's replicated around the world. And Utsada, I think that that does deserve some kind of a sound, don't you think? I don't have a sound
Absolutely.
ready. You don't think
Absolutely.
so?
No, it needs
I
sound. Go for it, Ajay.
go for okay.
Yeah.
If I can find one nice one, ever since I changed my computer, I'm missing some of the good sounds. But let's have at least something. That didn't go well. Okay, I will get these sounds on this computer because I now feel the lack of all the applauses that I have on the other computer. So my apologies to you and our other viewers that I don't have that. Hey Usada, everyone waits for this last one. So tell us about the Hindu phobe or Hindu hater of the week. And this really does require, something. Hindu phobe of the week. This week is,
Muhammad Hasnain.
and who is Mohammed Hasnain?
Muhammad Hasnain is a Pakistani American who attacked a taxi driver of Sikh origin uh, in New York, the Port Authority area, at the JFK International Airport. I'm sorry. He was a taxi driver in the JFK International Airport. He was targeted, beaten up. It's now being called a hate crime. We are very appreciative to the Indian consulate in New York who immediately acted upon it. And the irony of all ironies, the Khalistani lobby in America, which is supported and funded by Pakistan, stayed completely quiet about it because the attacker was a Pakistani American named Mohammed Husnain. That kind of exposes and tells you what the Khalistani lobby is and who they work for. Even they cannot even open their mouth when their so-called own Sikh brethren is targeted with hate crime in New York. But thankfully, Mr. Singh is going to recover. Mr. Hasnain has been charged of hate crime, and hopefully, it opens up the eyes to the people in America and around the world to the kind of hate and just pure, disgusting criminal tendencies that many of these people display, like people like Muhammad Hasnain.
Very well put, Utsada. And we hope that the taxi driver uh, who was injured recovers soon. Our best wishes to him and to his family. Utsada, with that, we come to the end of today's show. I want to take a moment and thank everyone who joined us today. I think it was a very informative show, and I think so. The uh, very good research on your part. I want to thank you for that. And once again, I want to thank everyone for joining. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, which is the policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America. We come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook on our channels on YouTube at at VHPA, VHP America, VHPA videos on YouTube, on Twitter on VHPA News, and we are also on Facebook on vhpamerica.org. And the show is hosted by Utsav Chakravarti. He's the executive director of Hindu Pact, and I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World in the Council of America, or VHPA. With that, I want to thank you everyone for joining. As always, we have a special tune created by Decibel, and we will be playing as we close the show down. Please stay tuned. It is a 2 minute tune and amazing music that they create just for Hindu Lounge. Ustada, any final words before we close it out?
I think there is going to be more to come on the Aafia Siddiqui case. I'm not sure it's all going to be something that we would like to see happen, but I think we'll stay tuned. We will analyze things as they come. The reason we will do it is not because of who Aafia Siddiqui is as an Al Qaeda terrorist or how the Jewish community was victimized yesterday. It's also because this affects Hindu communities directly. The people who are in support of Aafia Siddiqui in different ways also are targeting Hindu Americans and Hindus around the world in general. So stay tuned. We will follow up on this, and as this develops, we will inform you more.
All right. Thank you, Ustada. And everyone, thank you again. Namaste. And please stay tuned for this amazing bit of music.